Hey guys, this is Tom from Small Scale Life and the Small Scale Life podcast. Well, it's time for a garden tour. It's first part of September here. In September, it's a beautiful day today. We had sun. It's been raining for the past few days. We've got sun, so it's time to go out and take a look at the garden, see what's happening. Just got back from doing some field work. It was a gorgeous day out there, and kind of gets me in the mood for getting over into rural areas, but that's going to have to wait. Right now we have gardening to talk about. So let's talk about some changes in the yard first. So this is the backyard, and other videos I talked about the peonies around, well, what was this pine tree? Oops. Pine tree is gone. Management company came last week, said, we're taking out some trees. So they took out this massive pine tree. It was huge, huge. But it really dominated the landscape, and I took out all the peonies here that was around the pine tree that had all the mildew on it, the powdery mildew. But the tree is gone, and what that does is it opens up shade. You can just kind of see how it dominated. Look at that lilac. You know, nothing, it had so much shade, none of the branches grew here. And same with this lilac and this pine tree. It just, they did not grow very well due to the size of that pine, but it is gone completely. And I have no idea what they want to do with that hole. I could probably fill it with a few things for next year. Haha. But that really opens up this area for getting that afternoon sun. Now it's late in the day, probably getting to be about 5:30, 6 o'clock. So sun is blocked by another massive tree in the front yard. So it is getting afternoon sun now, and some of the veggies on this side of the beds are going, yay, awesome, we have sun, and they've really taken off. So let's take a walk through the beds here real quick, see how things are doing. We'll start in the guerrilla garden because that's kind of fun. That's a fun story. Now, if you remember, I had discovered squash borers in the stems, and they had done a number on these plants. They weren't producing worth a hill of beans. So I killed the squash borers and put some soil over the stems. And these plants have taken off. Now, this guy has always been a little smaller plant. Nothing is happening there yet, but I'm hoping that we get some squash here before the end of the season. You can see some powdery mildew starting to form here, but this plant has gotten a lot healthier, really healthy. We got some buds here. Do not see any zucchini coming yet, but this plant is just looking really good. This guy on the end, we actually do have a zucchini coming here, which is excellent. Another potential one over there, which is great. You know, something keeps eating the buds off of this plant. In all these plants, so I'm not sure if the squirrels or or what's eating it exactly. But these plants look a lot better, so it's a great story, you know, just about taking it from near death to where it is today. Might get one zucchini out of it, but good learning experience for me. Let's talk about bed number one. It's my biggest bed, and I have some cucumbers on the end. I've got some that I've already taken some off. Plants are looking really good. And I've taken, like I said, I've harvested a couple cucumbers here from these guys. So this will be a good pickling size, so I'll take those. I've also got the tomatoes, and I've got 4 varieties. This is a cherry, this is a cucumber, but cherry on that end. I've got some ripe ones, which is great, or getting close to ripe. More fruit all the way up. You can see the cherry with the sun, it's heading towards the sun. It's taller than the trellis, and in fact all my tomatoes are about taller than the trellis. I did not trim the root or the growing tip. Now that we're about 30 days out, 35, 40 days out from first frost, I'll probably do that. San Marzanos, I've already taken some of those that have ripened up, looking good. Again, taller than the trellis. Amish paste, they've been taller than the trellis for quite some time. Got some nice tomatoes that are starting to ripen up. Same over here. Here's a San Marzano that's ripening up there, so that looks good. Yeah, and there's some up top too. So again, the plant is actually way up in the lilac. It's just grown incredible this year. Here we've got, yeah, this is an Amish paste as well, growing right along. I've got a couple volunteers that I put in. This alpaca aroma was not doing well, so I dropped in a couple volunteers just to see what they were going to do. I don't expect much from them, but we'll see if we get some tomatoes at the end of the year here. Alpaca aromas are looking really good. This is a really healthy plant, and these alpaca aromas here on the end have been big producers. You can kind of see all the tomatoes, and I've already taken some off of these plants. Now this one I did take the root off the top, or the growing tip off. You can see I've got a sucker growing here that wants to take the role as growing tip. We'll see. But it's time to cut the tips on these. It really forces the issue. The squash does make it difficult to walk without crunching everything, but that's life. Just looking down the middle of the bed, I had onions here before, and a lot of them got destroyed by critters that just come in and dig up. And really, I do need to put some fencing around this bed in the future. But eagle eye folks that are looking at this video, you can tell I do have some onions that are coming up now, late in the season, but they're coming. Ha! Go figure. And you can see the, this is the third year planting in this bed, and it's kind of a gamble. I don't usually get leaves that are looking like this, and this is almost like a indication of some blight. So after this season, we'll not be planting tomatoes in this bed anymore. This is a San Marzano, and it's coming along. It's just not as big as the others, and now it's getting shade due to the monster in bed too. Oh yes, will there be monsters. In this bed I do have some cherry tomatoes. You can see those growing. I got a couple ripe ones. Oh, there's some up top there too. I got a couple ripe ones. One critter took already, but I took the other one. That came off of those guys down there. Here you've got, I believe this is a Amish paste. You got a nice tomato there. Another one here. Another one there. Just not as prolific because not growing as much because we're in the shadows here. The beans have gone crazy. Look at that. Look at all those beans. Just crazy amount of beans. And more buds coming. So I've got bean patrol to do here. Cut them and get a bunch of these beans just everywhere. Now it did do what I didn't want it to do. The tomatoes are up in the lilac, and now the beans are making the trip. So I'm gonna have to cut those down. You can see it's curled way up there already. So these will just go up 15 feet. It doesn't, they did it last year. It'll do it again unless I trim that tip. But I just have more buds, more beans. Really nice, really nice. And I've been, oops, well, that tip I don't have to worry about. So it won't go this way like this one is. I don't want it to go that way, so I am going to trim that. I just don't want, I want to control it somewhat. I've done that a few before. I should have done that with this guy. So maybe I'll trim it right up there. I do have a couple of tomatoes that I've planted on the outside of the box. They were planted late. This guy is a San Marzano. So finally getting some tomatoes there. These are really loving it that the pine tree is gone. This one is San Marzano as well. Looking like coming along. Looking good. And in this case, oh yeah, it's around the other side. I do have some tomatoes on the other side. We'll go around there. I've got another Amish paste that's starting to put out some tomatoes, which is great. I got to take the sucker, do some trellising here, more beans everywhere. I've got a cherry here. You can see they're getting ripe. That's great. It's tucked in here. More cherry tomatoes, beans, tomatoes. It's chaos, but it's awesome. I love it. I love it. It's awesome. These beans are just going crazy this year. It's just going nuts. Look at this. I got a runner right out here. It's going to go over into the next bed. It's crazy. The bush beans down there, I'll just have to troll them. I'm not sure what's going on down there. Yeah, a few beans down there. But then you've got more tomatoes here. So these tomatoes are actually doing really well over here. Doing really nicely. And the beans are just crazy. I've got so many beans and I don't know what I'm going to do with them all. I'll figure something out. Look at that. Just beans everywhere. Tomatoes, beans. It's awesome. It's really cool. It's exciting. I got some rhubarb to take. This bed I cleaned out and really don't have much in there. I've got a couple of pepper plants that the animals are just taking to town. I think this might be some garlic. You can see the critter's just been digging around in there. This bed needs a fence too. Over here I've got some volunteer tomatoes that came up out of the oregano. I have no idea what variety they are. Probably cherry. Don't know. We'll find out once the fruit starts to come. But I'm just kind of leaving them. I just want to see what happens. It's all experimental. These are another couple volunteers that I have. I threw them in this bin and just kind of let them do their thing, but then they're kind of getting out of control. So I just put in a piece of conduit and strung them up. And got a couple suckers like that. It's a sucker. Take that off. But it's starting to come with fruit. So I'll do some pruning on these. This one, a piece of it broke off, but you know, it's coming right along. Now I am trying something. I saw this in Pinterest for watering. I have some holes drilled in the 2 liter gallons, or the 2 liters, and I'll put some water in there and I'll slowly water these tomatoes. It's something I'm trying just for fun. And finally, my potatoes here. They're not dead yet. They're doing all right. I was a little nervous. They look like they're thriving and they're rocking. So let's let them grow. Let them grow. So overall assessment, things are going pretty well. You know, I haven't had to, it's been kind of on autopilot here the last week or two. I really haven't done much. And that's kind of by design, but it's also to see what happens. God, the beans. You know, over here, my vertical garden, I am going to plant this. I'm going to put lettuce and greens in this. So this is going to get active here this week. And my parsley, I'm going to harvest this off. So all the parsley is going to get harvested off. There are some weeds in there. Weed. But it's time to harvest this off, dry it out, or use it in dishes, and put some greens in here. So I want greens in the verticals and in this bed. This bed, this is where I put all the tomatoes or the onions. So you can see some of the onions are rebounding. Some of them I think will just, I might just leave them and see what pops next year, because that's what happened last year. I just left some of them and they overwintered really well. So this is a raised bed, literally. So we'll just see what happens. And then my final tomato plant is hiding over here. And this is a San Marzano. I've got some fruit here, but it's pretty bushy. So I haven't been doing much pruning on it, and you can see I've got suckers going. Probably needs to be trimmed up. But this is an experimental one. Just wanted to see what would happen. I'm just running experiments this year. It's kind of fun. That's the way we do it. I hope your experiments are going well. I'm about to go over to the driveway in my next video, and I'll show you how my wicking bed experiments are doing. But this has been great. I've got tomatoes that are over 7 feet tall, probably approaching 14 feet tall. Well, maybe not that tall. Probably 12 feet tall. I mean, some of these are pretty tall because you got to remember I had lowered them all. So part of me just wants them to grow and see how tall they are, just so I can show a couple people what I can do. But like I always said, I wanted productive, not tall. Another sucker right there. You can almost plant that and make it a new plant, but it's late in the season. We're not going to do that. We are just going to go for trying to produce as much fruit as we can right now. All right. Well, hopefully you guys get a little inspiration. It's time for fall, guys. It's time to it's harvest time. It's preserving time. It's canning time. It's time to plant some fall greens. Up here, we've got about 45 days or so before fall, before frost, maybe 30 days. Just depends. So it's time to get stuff going. I'm probably late on that already, but lettuces, quick growing greens, you can get something going and have it by the time first frost hits. And some of those plants, like spinach, actually does better. Spinach and kale, they actually do okay with some frost. So it's time to get rolling, guys. Thank you for tuning in. We're gonna have, I've been doing a lot of fitness, a lot of weight loss stuff with the Healthy Lifestyle podcast and everything going on there. So I'm gonna try to get some gardening and preservation stuff going on. I was on a podcast, we talked about survival, gardening in the survival situation or apocalypse, and I want to do some more on that. Also kind of wrap up the season. We got a salsa challenge coming. There's just a lot going on. So stay tuned. We've got a lot more gardening stuff coming around. It's been kind of a crazy July, crazy August. So now it's time to dig in with gardening, food preservation.